Disclaimer. These are my feelings about multiplayer games, and I am not hating on the games I mention in this video. I love and respect them in different ways. If you do not agree with my point of view, that is totally fine. I own quite a few multiplayer games. I even gave it its own tab in my Steam library. So it's not like I don't play multiplayer games. Quite the opposite. I love playing games together with friends, family, and my partner. Then why do I have issues with these types of games? There's a few reasons. The most obvious reason is scheduling and things tied to that. Finding time in everyone's schedules to play games can be a pain and can make it quite difficult to organize play sessions. An excellent example of games heavily influenced by schedule is Among Us. This game is really only playable if you have 5 or more people. This March I have been playing a few hours here and there with some friends as a throwback to 2020 and quarantine times. Back then it was super easy to find time because everyone was locked inside and had nothing better to do. But nowadays everyone has different schedules and responsibilities, and it just becomes harder and harder to find time to play games like these. I guess growing up and getting older also doesn't help with that. And before you guys come at me and say, "Well, GhostGirl, why don't you just play in the online lobbies?" Because they suck. That's why. Having to use the chat is just terrible. It works out fine if you're in a call with your friends and only one of you cannot speak, but if everybody in the lobby needs to use the chat, it's just not fun anymore. And that brings me to my next point. As I was hinting at during the last bit of my previous point, communication plays a major role in multiplayer games. Games like Among Us, but also most multiplayer shooters or Phasmophobia, being able to properly communicate with the people you're playing with is super important. I think I made my point about Among Us quite clear, but the same thing goes for Phasmophobia. This game is really only playable with friends if most of you are able to talk out loud. Especially games without a chat function really suffer from this problem. If you cannot hear others, you can't figure out clues right or cannot tell if someone needs your help fast. Typing in chat could also distract you from the game itself, which might influence your performance. I found that in Helldivers 2, if you want to use the chat, you need to stand still in order to be able to type. If you're surrounded by a horde of Terminids or automatons, this is really not ideal. Now in this case, Helldivers 2 has a voice chat that is functional, so you could use that over the chat option if you're able to speak. Some games use their voice chat very well, like Phasmophobia and Lethal Company, where the proximity chat also gets heard by enemies, so your location will be given away. Alright, you found a game you'd like to play, but your friends are unavailable. No big deal, the game you have in mind has a functioning voice chat. You will be able to communicate with the random players you will put in a lobby with. And that's also my next point. Randoms. It really is just hit or miss. Most of the times it's a miss, unfortunately. For some reason, randoms will almost never cooperate with me. They will do the opposite of what is necessary for the game or what I ask of them. Please do not run headfirst into a whole wave of enemies all by yourself without equipment, please. You know, stuff like that. Sometimes I will get matched up with people many levels lower than me. The randoms will make many rookie mistakes that really should not be done on the difficulty I'm playing, which can sometimes lead to us losing the game. The opposite is also true. If I get matched up with players many levels higher than me, I will feel useless or ignored because they either don't need me or don't trust me enough to help them out. It really just is not great in any situation. On very rare occasions, I might meet someone that's about the same skill level as me and is actually kind, but it's so rare that I don't like to take my chances. I try to avoid playing with randoms by myself as much as I can. If I'm with 1 or 2 of my friends and we're in a 4-person lobby, Having one or two randoms in there is more enjoyable to me than if I'm by myself, since I will still be able to directly talk to my friends. And make fun of the randoms if they are terrible. I know, I'm a bad person. PvP games, or player versus player games, are really just not my cup of tea unless I play with friends. The only reason I play Fortnite occasionally is because my friends wanted me to play with them. Fun fact, it's also the only PC game I play that's not on Steam. The reason why I am not drawn to PvP games is mostly tied to the randomness of them. I am someone who really likes a certain amount of predictability, and you just really don't have that in PvP games because everyone plays differently. It's not like I'm playing against AI all the time, like in games such as Helldivers or Deep Rock Galactic. There will always be at least a handful of real players in Fortnite lobbies, and Among Us is fully compromised of real players. Even other elements in games like these, such as chests or other loot, are random. You can almost never predict anything in PvP games, and I just don't vibe with that if I'm by myself. With friends, there's less pressure and we can laugh about the bad RNG or the ways we've been killed. There's also Stick Fight, a game where you kill each other as stick figures where weapons drop from the sky at random intervals. I wouldn't really play this game without at least one friend in the 4-person lobby, since the game just is not as fun without friends. There's nobody to jokingly insult or laugh with, since the chat in that game is not the greatest one I've ever seen. As I'm writing this part of the script, I'm racking my brain on which PvP games I've played other than these three, but I can genuinely not think of any other than these. It just goes to show how few PvP games I play. At the very beginning of this video, I mentioned I have a special tab for multiplayer games in my Steam library. Now the problem with some of these games is that they are only playable with someone else. I'm talking about games like Overcooked 2, Fireboy and Watergirl, and the We Were Here games. Games that are literally unplayable by yourself. You need someone else to play these. And the problem is that someone else needs to be in the mood to play those games with you. Some of these games have been chilling in my library for a long time while being either untouched, looking at you, We Were Here Expedition the Friendship, or having played very little of it. Most often, a scenario like this happens. Me. Hey, I really would love to play Overcooked right now. Would you like to play it with me? Other person. No, I'm really not in the mood for that game right now. I would much rather play insert shooter game here. Me. Oh, okay. I guess we'll play it another time. And then it just kind of never happens. But GhostGirl, there are many games in that list of yours that can be both multiplayer and single player. You could just play some of those all by yourself. And yes, you are right about that, but that's the problem with those games. They have both options. And if you are somewhat like me, you tend to play those types of games mostly with friends. When I boot up those games all by myself, I get reminded of playing together with my friends, and I just suddenly feel lonely. Games I suffer from this especially are Deep Rock Galactic, where after 140 plus hours of game time, I still have not played 10 solo missions. And the same goes for Lethal Company, Risk of Rain 2, and Phasmophobia. It just doesn't feel the same when I play by myself. Especially in games with big worlds or maps like Risk of Rain 2 and Deep Rock Galactic, the sheer amount of space makes me feel small when I'm all by myself. I feel claustrophobic, yet too free at the same time. Completing missions or progressing through worlds does not give me the same feeling of accomplishment, because I have nobody to share it with. One of the only games I have felt drawn to play alone in recent times is RoboQuest. I love the game so much that I was not bothered by playing it alone, even though most of my playtime was spent playing with my partner. I think I know why this is an exception for me. I think it's easier for me to play games with both multiplayer and single player by myself if I started in single player mode to begin with. My first memories of the game will be of me being alone and all by myself, so I won't be as nostalgic of my loved ones when I do play it alone later on. I adore multiplayer games because I always have a blast playing them with my loved ones. They are great at bringing people closer together, and as you can clearly tell by my Steam library, I am more than happy to play them. Just not so much by myself. Thank you for listening to my rant, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. See you next time.